Good morning, class. So today we will start with the kingdom Animalia. We have completed the kingdom Plantae that dealt with the algae, then higher one bryophytes, pteridophytes, then gymnosperm, and the highest one was the angiosperm, which was the flower, which contained the flowers and also called as the flowering plants. So now we'll talk about kingdom Plantae, and first of all we will discuss the main categories are the main criteria on which we have divided the kingdom Plantae. So what are the basic features of the kingdom Plantae? We'll try to complete it in this class. So what first of all, what is an animal? So what are the basic requirements for defining something or assigning something or some living being as an animal? So what are animals? They are eukaryotic. What are eukaryotes? Which have a true nucleus, that is a nucleus that is bound by a nuclear membrane, that is a well defined nuclear membrane, and that's why they are true eukaryotes. That is, eu means true and karyote word is used for the nucleus, so they are the eukaryotic organisms. Now these are also multicellular, so most of the animals are multicellular. Multicellular means they are having more than one cell, and each cell is assigned to perform a particular function. That is, they have division of labor, which is absent in the unicellular organisms. So now what are the other category or the characteristic of these heterotrophic? These are heterotrophic, that is, they are dependent upon the plants or the autotrophs for obtaining their food, and they obtain nutrients by ingestion, that is taking food inside by the organ, that is mouth. So they are heterotrophs, and then they are able to digest their food within their body. So some animals are there which are the lower ones, some organisms are there, the lower organisms, they digest their food outside the body, that is usually in water. But animals are capable of digesting their food inside the body, as they have different cells which are assigned to perform this digestion also. So animals also lack the cell walls that provides strong support in the bodies of plants and fungi. So cell wall is present in plants and fungi. So but this cell wall is different in case of plants and in case of fungi. It is made up of different material, but the basic function of the cell wall is to provide the strong support to the body. So now, what are the distinct features or the characteristics of an animal cell? That most of the animal cells have muscle cells. Also, the nerve cells present. These nerve cells control the muscle cells. So now it is believed that all animal animal phyla originated in the sea, and freshwater and terrestrial forms evolved later. So the first, in case of plants also, we discussed that algae were the plants that were completely aquatic, and same is there in the case of animals. The lower ones originated in the sea and freshwater, and the terrestrial forms or the land forms came later on. Then the terrestrial form evolved from the marine forms, that is from the seawater or the freshwater. It is most probable that the multicellular organisms, they were originated from the Protocista, that is a kind of organism that was uh, considered to be uh, to be that organisms on which the complete animal phyla is dependent, and it originated from that. So in the year 1866, the Ernest Haeckel suggested that certain protoctistans, probably the protozoans, divided repeatedly into daughter cells, and then they fail to separate. So when they fail to separate, then they kept on clumping together and forming new and new or higher order of organisms that were then considered to be as higher animals. So the basic or the most lower one is the protozoan. So some anatomical as well as functional differences also arose between the collection of animals, and that led to specialization. Specialization is different parts of the body are assigned to perform different functions. So this produced a multicellular organisms with limited division of labor. This was called as a colonial theory. According to the colonial theory, the multicellular organisms have only limited division of labor. So it is probably true that the porifera arose in this way. So the second hypothesis that was put forward by Hadzi in the year 1944, it suggested that the nucleus of the protozoan, which was considered to be the most lower kingdom Animalia, or part of kingdom Animalia, so the most of the nucleus of the protozoan divided repeatedly and it formed multinucleate protozoan. So the division of nucleus was repeatedly, that is, it was continuous, and on continuous division of the nucleus, the multinucleate condition was present in protozoan. So subsequent internal division produced a multicellular condition, and this multicellular and multinucleate condition is called as the syncytial theory. So first one was the colonial theory. According to this, there was only limited division of labor, and second one was the repeated division of the nucleus inside the protozoans, and it gave rise to the syncytial theory. So this hypothesis has been widely accepted, and it explains the origin of all multicellular organisms other than sponges. So sponges uh, uh, are a category of the kingdom Animalia that are not studied very nicely, because their origin is still a topic of debate. But all the other multicellular organisms are being considered to be evolved by this syncytial theory. So the onset of multicellularity and the increase in the size of organisms produced many physiological as well as anatomical adaptations. So what are the adaptations that these multicellular organisms, the animals, adopted and became specialized? So we'll talk about them later. First, most animals are diploid, that is having two set of nucleus, and they reproduce sexually, that is the fusion of the male and female gametes, which ultimately gives rise to zygote, and the zygote forms into embryo, and then the baby is being produced. Later on, they proceed through a series of typical similar developmental stages. So there were some developmental stages, like first of all, the division lead to a stage called morula. It was a 32 cell stage. Then morula changed to blastula and then gastrula. So these are the some developmental stages that are seen in the development of an animal. This is a diagrammatic picturization of how the complete cycle of the animal occurs. For example, the first one is meiosis, that is a reduction division, and by the reduction division, the egg is formed. Single-celled egg, single nucleated egg is formed, and the sperm is also single nucleated. These both combine together and form the 2N condition, that is one N, one nucleus from the egg, and the other one from the sperm. These both combine together and fuse. This fusion is called as fertilization. After the fertilization is done and the zygote is formed, zygote undergoes some mitotic changes and forms the 8-cell stage. These are the 4 cell, and at the back of this you can see there are other 4 cells. So now the first stage is the 8-cell stage. Then again the division occurs. These are now again number of repeated cells called as the blastula. Then occurs the gastrula with more and more number of divisions. Then this is the first early gastrula. So this picture defines the middle layer of then the middle layer and the outer layer and the inner layer are being formed and called as the endoderm, ectoderm, and mesoderm. So endoderm is the innermost layer, outermost is ectoderm, and this is mesoderm. So this is all by the repeated division, and then the larva is formed. Larva undergoes metamorphosis. Metamorphosis is the development of uh, uh, early stage of something into an adult stage. So sometimes it is progressive and sometimes it is retrogressive. So what is the difference between progressive metamorphosis and retrogressive metamorphosis? Progressive metamorphosis is the one in which uh, the division leads to higher forms, that is more advanced and more typical forms. For example, in butterfly you must have seen that the caterpillar changes into a complete young butterfly, and that is having uh, more cells, more tissues, and it is a little bit typical. But in the retrogressive metamorphosis, which is usually seen in some bacteria, what happens in that? the higher form of bacteria, they gets divided and changes to simpler forms. So this is retrogressive. Changing from lower forms to higher forms, it is progressive metamorphosis, and changing from the higher forms to lower forms, it is retrogressive metamorphosis. So the word metamorphosis is used for defining something if we talk about its changes. So now, what is animal phylogeny? So the biologists, they categorize animals on some basic criteria. So what are, the two main criteria were general features of the body structure. That is, they considered the anatomical features, like the features that were distinguished or can be seen from the outside. And then second one, they that was most recently used and it is considered to be more appropriate, they use the genetic data. First of all, what is phylogeny? So phylogeny is the study of relationships among different groups of organisms and their evolutionary development. So phylogeny talks about that how different organisms are related to each other and how the simple ones change to the advanced one. And phylogeny attempts to trace the evolutionary history of all life on the planet. So what is the evolutionary history means? How from one single cell all this complete universe or complete uh, living organisms develop. So phylogeny talks about this, the relationship between all the organisms. Now, what is the uh, different divisions that we'll have to study today? So what this is according to the phylogeny. So how they are related to each other. These lines shows how everything is related to each other. This is also called as the phylogenetic tree. So it is made for both plants and animals. So the first one is the ancestral protist. So these are considered to be the most older ones or the most primitive ones. So they have no true tissues. Then what in under this, what comes? The sponges. Then when tissues arise, they were again further divided. So now the division was on the basis of symmetry, that how the organisms divide. So the two types of symmetry was the radial symmetry and the bilateral symmetry. I'll show you what happens in radial and bilateral symmetry in later on, but first let's discuss about this tree. Then radial symmetry gave rise to cnidarians, and the bilateral symmetry again divided and gave rise to these mollusks, flatworms, and the annelids, as well as roundworms and arthropods. They were again further divided on the basis of the segmentation, how the segments were done in these. And then comes the most advanced one, the echinoderms and the chordates. So this is how a phylogenetic tree is made, considering just one uh, feature. So now we'll talk about the organ level or the body plan, how the division occurs from one cell, how a complete organism is formed. So the basic or the functional basic most structural and functional unit of life is considered to be the cell. Then cell, when many cells aggregate together, which is the condition in multicellular organisms, the cells combine together. The cells which are performing the similar functions and are of same origin, they combine and form tissues. So now the tissues again, they combine together to form an organ. Organ also is specified for performing different functions, and when one organ or many organs combine together, they form an organ system. Like for example, nervous system is made up of many different organs, like what spinal cord is involved in that, then brain is involved in that. So all this combination is forming a nervous system. And when many systems combine together, for example the endocrine system, the nervous system, the digestive system, and all these excretory and all, they combine and form a complete organism. So this is how a complete body is made up in case of multicellular organism, but it is completely not the case in unicellular organisms. So now we'll talk about the body plans in animals. So the body plan of different animals shows considerable variations. So the simplest animals are sponges. So though they do not form true tissues, but in other multicellular animals or organisms, similar cells operate collectively and become specialized to form tissues. So sponges are the most lower ones and they have no true tissues, but in other multicellular organisms the tissues are formed, and how are tissues made up? By the combination of different cells. In higher animals, many different tissues are formed, each performing different functions. So a number of tissues may work together as an organ, and then organ work together as an organ system. So first body plan of all animals is the cell aggregate plan. So this one, first one is the cell aggregate plan. What happens in this plan? The animal body is just an aggregation of cells with little or no coordination between them. So in this, cells are present many in number, but there is very much little or even no coordination between the different cells. So that's why if no coordination, there are no tissues or organs. So the members of the phylum Porifera, the sponges, exhibit this type of body plan. So this is the simplest one, that is the cell aggregate plan. It is found in the case of sponges, the Porifera, and they are not coordinated together. Therefore, no true tissue system. Then comes the blind sac plan. So this type of body plan is more complex than the cell aggregate plan. The cells are organized into tissues and they exhibit division of labor. So in this, the cells are coordinated together to form tissues, and they also show some division of labor. These organisms possess a digestive cavity. This is the digestive cavity. Digestive cavity is for the purpose of taking through mouth. They take in food and then the digestion occurs here. So with only one opening. So there is only one opening for both the excretion as well as ingestion. The food is taken in and the undigested food is thrown out through same opening. Now this body plan is seen in coelentrates. What are example of coelentrates? The hydra and flatworms, that is liver fluke. So these two are said to be fall into blind sac plan. So this is the lowest one or the most primitive. This is more advanced with only one cavity, and then comes the most highest one, the tube within a tube plan. So this type of body plan is still more complex, and the animal exhibits organ system organization. So the digestive system is continuous tube with an opening at each end. So there is the digestive system, which is a complete tube. So the alimentary canal, from the mouth it starts, then alimentary canal is again divided into many parts, and then it ends up to anus. So these are two openings. So the food is taken in through an anterior opening, that is the mouth. Anterior means the front part, and posterior the last part or the back part. So the undigested food is egested out through a posterior opening, that is anus. So as the food passes through the alimentary canal, it is digested and absorbed. All the higher invertebrates and vertebrates exhibits this type of body plan. So this is all about the body plan. Now we'll talk about the symmetry. I told you we'll talk about radial and bilateral symmetry later. So what is now symmetry? So the general form of an organism is said to be its symmetry. Whatever the general form of an organism is, we call it as its symmetry. So now, on the basis of symmetry, animals are of following three types. So the third one is the asymmetrical. That is, they do not show any kind of symmetry. So they are the asymmetrical in animals that cannot be divided into two equal halves in any plane. So they are called as the asymmetrical. So sponges having profuse branching pattern belong to this category. Sponges, as they are the most lowest one, they belong to the asymmetrical category. That is, they cannot be divided in any body and any plane. Then comes the radial symmetry. What happens in the radial symmetry? In radially symmetrical animals, a cut through the axis of the body, this you can see in the diagram, a cut is made through the axis of the body at any point gives two equal halves that are mirror images of each other. So what are mirror images? So the non-superimposable images are said to be the mirror images, like your hands are the mirror images of each other. When you cannot use both of your hands, like when you put one hand upon each other, the thumb will be uh, pointed outside and it will not be able to complete completely joined. So that's why the mirror images are non-superimposable. So in this diagram you can see that the division is made, and from the center the division is done, and both parts are divided, and these are mirror images of each other. Okay, so now what is bilateral symmetry? In bilateral symmetry, the body can be divided into two equal halves only in one plane. So unlike the radial symmetry, the division can only be done in one plane, and the body either have a front and a rear end, that is the anterior and posterior, or the upper back and the lower back, that is the dorsal and ventral. So either in this direction the body could be divided, or either in this direction, not both the directions. So these again are the mirror images of each other. After this we'll talk about the body cavity. So what is body cavity? The body cavity is also called as coelom. Coelom is a fluid filled cavity that is present between the gut and the outer body wall. All other internal organs of the animal are suspended in the coelom, that is they are being lying or hanging into the coelom. The main function of the coelom, what is the main function of coelom, we'll discuss. It acts as a hydrostatic skeleton and allows greater body flexibility. So the space which is responsible for providing the flexibility to the body, it is called as coelom. It acts as a shock absorber and protects internal organs from external shock. So as it is providing flexibility, therefore it also provides the body from any external shocks. It enables activities of the body wall and alimentary canal to operate independently to each other. So coelom is dividing the alimentary canal and the body wall, so that they are being separated and they are working independent of each other. It provides space for the enlargement of internal organs. The body cavity, as it is empty, so it is also providing some space so that the internal organ can enlarge or increase in size. So the fluid of the cavity acts as a circulatory medium for the transport of food. So there is some amount of fluid also present in the body cavity, that is also working as shock absorber, and as well as it is also working as a medium for circulation of various body fluids. So now we'll talk about the different types of body cavity. All tissues and organs of an animal are formed from three germ layers. I told you that what are the three germ layers? The ectoderm, that is the outermost, mesoderm, and the endoderm. So a true coelom arises within the mesoderm. So whenever the mesoderm forms a coelom, it is called as the true coelom. So thus it is lined by on all sides by tissue formed from the mesoderm. Line means that they are being surrounded on all sides by the mesoderm. Mesoderm is a layer that is present in between, and when the coelom is made up of that mesoderm, or it is lined or covered by the mesodermal layer, it is called as the true coelom. And if the coelom is not made up of the mesoderm, then it is said to be pseudocoelom or acoelom. So what is acoelom? First we'll talk about the acoelom condition. The acoelom is also called as the no body cavity. Acoelom, A refers to the absence of coelom. So the in the case of acoelomate animal, they have no coelom at all. So the mesoderm completely fills the space between the ectoderm and endoderm layers and forms a solid middle layer. So there is no space in the between of ectoderm and endoderm, and the middle layer, that is the mesoderm, completely occupies that middle space, and there is no cavity. Therefore, no internal body cavity is present, and porifera, coelentrates, and flatworms are the type of acoelomate organisms. So the lower organisms, that is porifera, coelentrates, and the flatworms, they comes under the category the acoelomate, in which the mesoderm is present and completely occupying the space between ectoderm and endoderm. Then comes the coelomate organisms. In most animals, an extensive internal space or the body cavity is present, and how it is developed. The mesoderm is not occupying the complete space between the endoderm and ectoderm, and that's why some space is present or the cavity is present. This forms the separates the body wall from the alimentary tract, and therefore these animals are called as a coelomate. So on the basis of the development of this coelom, the division is again there, the pseudocoelom as well as the true coelom. So in the pseudocoelom, what happens? The pseudocoelom arises from the blastocele. So what is blastocele? I told you the division starts from morula. So morula is the most lower stage. Then comes the blastula. So the blastula, the cavity that is present in the blastula, we call as the blastocele. So that in the pseudocoelomate condition, the coelom is arising from the blastocele, and it is arising at an early stage of the embryonic development, and it remains bounded on the outside by ectoderm and on the inside by endoderm. So बाहर से वो ectoderm के से सराउंड रहती है और अंदर से बाय द एंडोडर्मल लेयर. जो इंटरनल ऑर्गन्स होते हैं वो रिमेन फ्री, उसमें फ्री रहते हैं within the pseudocoelom, and the spaces between them are filled with large vacuolated mesodermal cells. So the internal organs जो भी उसमें सस्पेंडेड रहते हैं pseudocoelom में, वो एक लार्ज कैविटी में प्रेजेंट होते हैं और उसमें सिर्फ कुछ थोड़े थोड़े पार्ट्स में मेसोडर्मल लेयर्स, मेसोडर्मल सेल्स प्रेजेंट होते हैं. सो जो वेरियस ऑर्गन्स होते हैं, they can separate independently of each other. So they are not dependent upon each other, and they are independently performing their various functions. Mesodermal cells may deform, and this enables the organisms to change its body shape. And what in which animals the pseudocoelom is present in the nematodes and the rotifers. So mesodermal layers अपने आप को चेंज करती रहती है, and this helps the organism also to change its shape. So these types of body cavity, the pseudocoelom, is found in the nematodes and the rotifers. Then comes the true coelom. What happens in the true coelom? It originates by the split within the embryonic mesoderm. So when the embryonic mesoderm is dividing and forming a cavity, then it is called as true coelom. The cavity of the coelom is bounded by a lining of the mesodermal cells. So the coelom is on the outer side, it is covered by the mesodermal cells, which is called as the peritoneum. So the covering of the mesodermal cells that is present outside the coelom, it is called as peritoneum. The coelom cavity is also fluid with the coelomic fluid. In the pseudocoelom, the fluid is absent, but in the case of true coelom, the coelomic fluid is present. And in some cases, like for example the echinoderms and hemichordates, the coelom it originates by the separation of mesoderm from the endoderm and some outpushings of the gut. So the gut outpushes, that is comes outside, and this cavity is formed because of the outpushing of the gut. Then the coelom is formed, and in which animals? The echinoderms and hemichordates. So this was all about the coelom or the body cavity. Now we'll talk about the body segmentation. So what is segmentation? Segmentation is also called as metamerism. It is an architectural body plan in which an organism is built by a series of segments. So you can see these are the different segments, and these segments are forming the complete body. And these segments are called as metamers, and the formation of metamers is called as metamerization. So the segments forming an individual are identical in structure and organs they contain. So that is, the individual is formed by rhythmic repetition of the segments which are similar both externally and internally. So these segments are alike. That means this segment is similar to this one, similar, and this one is similar to this one. All these are similar in both externally and internally, and they combine together to form the complete body. That in this case we'll call it the segmentation. So metamerism is clearly seen in the case of annelids, that is the earthworms, where most of the organs of the body are arranged on a metameric plan throughout the length of the body. So they keep on dividing. In arthropods also, this is an example of arthropod because it is an example of cockroach. So in arthropod also, the metameric segmentations bear pairs of appendages for functions. Appendages, these are the pair of appendages. Pair means they are two in number, and appendages means they are providing the support to the body. In insects also, the metameric segments are grouped to form various regions of the body like head, thorax and abdomen. So now the body of the tapeworms shows segmentation, but it differs basically from that of annelids as it is pseudosegmentation. What is pseudosegmentation? the metametric segmentation is not similar to that of the annelids, and that's why they are not similar to each other. The metamers are different, so that's why it is called as pseudo segmentation. Now, what is civilization? The specialization of the anterior end to form the head. So, civilization word is used for the formation of the head, that is the most anterior part of the segments. They form some specialized tissues and structures, and they completely develop into a head. So this is called a cephalization. It is due to the formation of structures used in feeding and concentration of receptors. What are receptors? These antenna are present. The eyes are also an example of receptors that receive the stimuli and transfer to the brain. So all these receptors are present in this region, that is the head region. And also there is presence of corresponding concentration of nervous tissue and forms a brain. So now again the animals are divided on the basis of body temperature, like these are the invertebrates and the other one is vertebrate. So first of all, I'll talk about what is the differentiation on the basis of body temperature. The two types are the hemothermal, that is the warm blooded, and the animals whose temperature remains constant and does not change with the external atmospheric temperature. These are hemothermic. That is, even if there is cold outside, or if there is the condition is very hot outside in the atmosphere, the internal body temperature will remain same. So in what animals this is seen? In case of birds and animals, they are hemothermic. That is, they do not change their body temperature accordingly to the environmental temperature. Then comes the poikilothermic, that is the cold-blooded, the animals whose body temperature varies, that is, it changes with the environmental temperature. For example, in fishes, the fishes change their temperature according to the temperature of water. So that's why they come in under the category of poikilothermic animals. Fishes, amphibians, and invertebrates, all these are under the category of poikilothermic or the cold-blooded animals. So we'll start talking about the phylum Porifera in our next class. All the phylum we'll try to complete in 2 classes maximum. So thank you for this.